We pay homage to the Blessed One, the Compassionate One, the Gautama Supreme Buddha. Sadhu, sadhu. We also pay homage to our teacher, Lokaswami Nohanse, who gives us all these opportunities to learn the pure teachings of the Buddha and make powerful merits to our life, and also who teaches us the path to attain Nibbana. Sadhu.
Now we know already that there is a hard cover around our life. What is that cover? It's called ignorance. There's a hard cover around our life. It's called ignorance, avijja. Because of this ignorance, always there is a distortion perception in our life. Because of this cover. What is the meaning of distortion perception?
We don't see it in the real way.
Yeah, that means sanya vipallasa. The Supreme Buddha explained this as sanya vipallasa. Because of our life has been covered with that hard cover, hard shell, ignorance, always we perceive the world not in the real way. Because of this reason, always we are living our life something in very dark condition. That is why the Supreme Buddha explained always suffering is with our life. This suffering is not limited for this just life, but this suffering is a continuous process. That's called the cycle of birth and death, the long journey of samsara. Okay, now can you understand basically what is the reason for this suffering? That hard shell, that's called ignorance. Okay, what is the result of this ignorance? We haven't the ability to perceive the world in the
true perspective way.
Yes, the true perspective, that means in the real way, as it is. Always we perceive the world, Supreme Buddha said, in the distortion position, in the distortion perception. That means, in the world, when we perceive the world, the things that are impermanent we perceive as permanent. Impermanent thing as permanent. And the unpleasant things as pleasant. And the things with the foulness we perceive as beautiful and attractive things. And the things with non-self we perceive as self. That's called sanya vipallasa. In the Sanya Vipallasa Sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, our great teacher explained in this case, because of this distortion perception, we can't understand our life in the correct way. That is the real darkness in our life. Because of this darkness, we failed to understand the life in this long journey of samsara. So this life is very rare. This human life is very rare. Because of what? In this life, we have the opportunity to understand this about this shell. Understanding this shell, about the condition of this shell, if he is a wise person, he has the opportunity to break this shell. The breaking of this shell, what is the result? He or she will be able to perceive the world as it is. That's called true knowledge. The totally breakdown of the shell is called true knowledge. That's called vidya. So the thing we have to understand is, always we are in that shell. Living in that shell, we associate the other outer conditions. Understand? So that's called the distortion of the perception. Without the help of this Tathagata, no one can break this shell. The result of this unknown of the Four Noble Truth, again and again, he will be reborn in the animal world, in the ghost world, and in the hell, within the ghosts and the humans. With this birth, the result is only two things. What are those? Aging and death. So, understanding this, the nature of the birth, what is the nature of the birth? Only result is aging and death. Coming to this special point that within this birth, the only results are aging and death, the wise person, the wise man or woman, have the chance to overcome all the sufferings. That is why this human life is very, very, very rare one, and with so many opportunities to break that shell. Is it so? So, basically in the Supreme Buddha's Dhamma, we have to understand that in this our life, there isn't a self, or there isn't a thing that we can obtain like this, or this should be like this, and this should not be like this within our life. We have to understand that there isn't a condition like that. That's called self. How to understand that there isn't a self here in this our life? What is the way? We have to understand what? Yes, through what? Through the dependent arising. That's called Paticcasamuppada. Understanding the real nature of the life, that's called dependent arising. One can understand that there is nothing about the self here. There is a cause and effect in our life. So, if one can seize the cause, what is the result? The effect also cease. That is the basic theory. So, in our level, in this first step of the wisdom, this all the Supreme Buddha's knowledge is called the wisdom. So, that is why this Dhamma is for the wise, not for the unwise. So, what is the basic tool to understand this process? What is the basic tool in our life? Yes, that means wisdom. Wisdom is the basic tool to be developed in our life. Developing the wisdom, we have to do 4 things. How many things? 4 things. The first one is, we have to realize one thing. Second one is we have to eradicate one thing. Third one is we have to attain one thing. Fourth one is we have to follow one thing. What are those? The Four Noble Truths. The first truth should be realized or should be understood. The second truth should be eradicated. The third truth should be attained. That means experienced. The fourth should be followed. That means should be developed. That's called understanding the Four Noble Truths. That is the basic thing. That's the basic thing of the arising of the Supreme Buddha, to help to understand the Four Noble Truths. That's unknown of the Four Noble Truths is called ignorance. So what is the meaning of ignorance? Unknowing of the Four Noble Truths. So what is the reason for that hard shell? Same. Not understanding about the Four Noble Truths. The Vidya means, the true knowledge means understanding the Four Noble Truths. Now, is it clear? Only understanding the Four Noble Truths, one can break that shell. So, now suffering is with that shell. Now, without the shell, what is there? The suffering is with the shell. And without the shell, what is there? Real happiness. So what is the way to achieve the real happiness? Break the shell. After, with the breaking of that shell, step by step, through that shell, the real happiness is coming to that life. That is the Supreme Buddha's Dhamma. So if one has the ability to understand this truth fully, what is the result? The real happiness, the total happiness, the ultimate deliverance is with that life. So in this life, as possible as we can, we must try to break that shell. To break that shell, we have to understand about that Four Noble Truths. In this case, understanding of the Four Noble Truths, the basic path to enter of this knowledge of Four Noble Truth is understanding the dependent arising. We talked about it. In this first truth, what is the first truth? Suffering. So think about this. Supreme Buddha, our great teacher, explains that the birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, then so on. And at the end of this explanation, what is there? When summarizing the dukkha, suffering, the 5 aggregates of clinging is suffering. So that is the suffering. So what should we have to to be done with that suffering? We have to realize, we have to understand that suffering. So that means we haven't a real knowledge about the suffering. What's the meaning of it? The suffering is the thing we have to understand. So what's the meaning of that? We haven't a real understanding about the suffering. The suffering is always with our life. Aging, illness, death, sorrow, lamentation and grief and all the things. But we have a clear knowledge about this suffering. Because of this unknown of this suffering, the result is again and again we have to face for the suffering. Okay, now is it clear? The reason to understand the suffering is we have a clear understanding about the suffering. This is a noble truth. So the second one is the cause for the origination of the suffering. Okay, in the Supreme Buddha's Dhamma, what is the origination for the suffering? Craving. Simply it's craving. So, now let's take that 5 aggregates of thinking. That's meaning, in brief, the 5 aggregates of clingings are the suffering. So, Supreme Buddha explains that if someone understands these 5 aggregates of clinging, he has the chance to understand the whole mass of suffering. Understand? With the understanding of the 5 aggregates of clinging as it is, he or she has the opportunity to understand the whole mass of suffering. That means understanding the 5 aggregates of clinging, he will be able to understand the aging, birth, aging, illness, death, and sorrow, lamentation, grief, pain and despair, and all the sufferings, all the conditions of suffering. Can you understand it? So, the meaning of the unknown of these 5 aggregates of clinging is meaning is we haven't the understanding about birth. We haven't the understanding about the age. We haven't the understanding about the illness. We haven't the understanding about the death. And so on. So, in the second truth, the origination for the suffering is, as Supreme Buddha said, the craving. What is the meaning of it? We have the craving. We have the desire to what? To that 5 aggregates of clinging. Understand? The cause for the suffering, the origination of the suffering is craving. So suffering is the 5 aggregates of clinging. So this craving is with what? With that 5 aggregates of clinging. So, what is the meaning of that? We have the craving. We have the desire to what? To birth, to aging. We have the desire. We have the craving for illness. We have the craving for the death. We have the craving for the sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and all the sufferings. We have the craving for the suffering. That's called avijja, ignorance. Can you understand? What's the reason for our this small suffering? Ignorance. What's the ignorance? Yes, we have the craving for the suffering. We have the desire for the suffering. So, attaching to the suffering, grasping to the suffering, we wish Yes, we wish a life without suffering. That's called ignorance. All these distortion perception is because of that shell. Now can you understand the danger of that shell? Being with the desire and the craving for the suffering, again we hope a life without suffering. This thing is, we have the opportunity to understanding this thing only in the Supreme Buddha session. Now, is it clear the second truth? Yes, it is the craving for the 5 aggregates of clinging. That means that now 5 aggregates of clinging is the suffering now. So we have the suffering for the suffering. We have the desire for the suffering. The third truth is the cessation of the suffering. That's meaning if the craving is the origination of the suffering, what's the cessation? The remainless craving. So, what is this remainless craving contacting? With what? With that 5 aggregates of clinging. So, craving is with the 5 aggregates of clinging. That is why all the suffering is there. So, the cessation is what? The remains of that craving from what? From the 5 aggregates of clinging. That's the cessation of suffering. To understand this, to cease this suffering, to cease this cause of the suffering, to abandon the desire for the suffering, to abandon the desire, to abandon the craving with the 5 aggregates of clinging, there is a path to be followed. That's called Noble Eightfold Path. That is the fourth truth. So the meaning of the Noble Eightfold Path is what's the meaning? There is a path to escape from the aging. There is a path to escape from the illness. A path to escape from the death, sorrow and all the sufferings. So the meaning of that, we are following the Four Noble Truths is what? We are following the way to escape from the aging, to escape from the illness, escape from the death. What's the reason? We have to follow a special path to escape from these sufferings. What's the reason for that? We have the craving for that suffering. We have the desire in our depth for that suffering. That is why we have to follow a special path to break that ignorance, attaching with that suffering. This is the Dhamma for wise. Understand?